The Yakuza series had its own following in the West that was steadily growing over the years, but it wasn't until the official Western release of Yakuza 0 that the series shot to worldwide acclaim and has become a powerhouse franchise ever since. Telling one of the greatest stories about two of the most loved protagonists in one of the most dangerous underworlds against some of the most ruthless people, it can be easily seen why many fans say that 0 is the #1 entry. Its combination of emotional stories, fun minigames, exciting exploration, humorous world, and of course brutal combat mechanics, Yakuza 0 really has it all, and years later even came out with a slightly expanded director's cut. The European/North American one is what I'll be talking about the most, as from these 4 covers I'll be presenting, this is the majority of what it looks like, with only minor differences in the Japanese and Chinese ones, and a completely different cover for the director's cut. We have our 2 protagonists prominently displayed on the front against a backdrop that consists of the cast of supporting characters, the cities that the game takes place in, and a large amount of cash that's falling down. All of these combined give the impression that this is a big game with a very epic story to tell. Our main characters are Kazuma Kiryu on the right and Goro Majima on the left, who each play an important role in the events of 0, as we have a dual protagonist style of gameplay, switching between them both at certain story points. What is pretty striking about the two is that they have a sort of duality between them that shows them as very different people. Kiryu is bright and flashy with his white pinstripe suit and orange shirt with a gold chain design, while Majima is more formal in his black tuxedo, complete with a bow tie. Kiryu picked out his own suit as he's allowed to wear what he sees as his own personal Yakuza style, while Majima is forced to wear what he's told as he works as the manager of the Cabaret Grand while he is a prisoner of the Omi Alliance. This is also the first game that chronologically shows Majima wearing his eye patch after his left eye was removed when tortured in 1985 for insubordination. Adding to that, his hair is long enough to be tied up into a ponytail, showing that he's unable at present to conform to the short style he prefers. Both the hair and the eye patch, combined with the suit, just create this overall image of a man who's trapped being someone he's not. Between the two, it has this very black and white duality, which is pretty ironic as seeing their lives in the Yakuza, their thoughts, viewpoints, actions and words are anything but. Above them we have the supporting characters who are, all but one, based on real life actors. Riki Takeuchi plays Hiroki Awano, Hideo Nakano plays Keiji Shibusawa, Hitoshi Ozawa plays Daisuke Kuze, Arata Iura plays Tetsu Tachibana, and Shingo Tsurumi plays Tsukasa Sagawa. The only character who's not based on anyone is Makoto Makimura. The middle row, as it appears, are antagonistic characters, while the 2 on the top row are on the side of the protagonists, giving it a sort of layer effect. Sagawa appears to be sort of in the middle of them, as though even though he is a bad guy, his nuance and character story is different from the others. Now, each of the poses they're in seems to reflect their personality types. Tachibana's pose shows power and an unyielding force, which also comes from the scene where he's able to mysteriously switch off the power in Kamurocho temporarily. Makoto's face is of innocence and optimism, seemingly not showing anything that could be considered selfish or antagonistic towards anyone. Sagawa has the pose of a Yakuza member who is there to do his job, a soldier standing at attention and ready to follow orders. Awano's purpose in the Yakuza is simply to lead a life of luxury, and being in the underworld is his way of obtaining it, therefore his pose is from the scene where he's dancing in a nightclub. Kuze's mindset of his Yakuza life is to never stop fighting and to make it to the top, to never give up the strength you cultivate no matter the odds, and so is seen as a fighter, referencing his scene when he ambushes Kiryu in the sewers on a motorbike. Finally, Shibusawa is seen to be the rational and calm and brains of the opposite trio, but underneath is ready to get blood on his hands for his opportunity to gain power with his cold, vicious and manipulative personality. And therefore, his pose is from the scene where he explains that he will be the one to give Dojima the empty lot, no matter the cost. What's interesting is that Majima and Kiryu are both looking in the same direction, indicating that they're after the same thing, a life in the Yakuza. For Majima, it's about the freedom of fitting into a place that his chaotic personality belongs to, and for Kiryu, it's about following in the footsteps of his foster father. Two very different reasons, but both leading to the same place, the Tojo clan. The officers themselves, all being high-ranking members of the Dojima family, all look in somewhat different directions as they each want different things. There is one detail that is to be noted here, and that's Kusei's outfit. This particular pose he's in on his motorcycle, as I mentioned before, is from the scene in which he ambushes Kiryu in the sewers with a steel pipe while riding a motorbike, when Kiryu is trying to escape the Dojima family's men. In that scene, Kusei is shown to be bandaged up from a previous fight because he doesn't have his jacket or shirt on. However, while he is clearly meant to be referencing that scene on the cover, he's fully clothed, and we can only see his finger removal wound bandaged up. This was most likely done to keep him in line with the other two lieutenants who look more powerful and flashy, as I reckon if we saw him as he actually looks in the sewers, he may just come across as another thug and it would completely diminish his character upon first sight. In the background, we can see three different locations. In the top left, we can see the familiar sign in Kamurocho, the most iconic location in the entire series, which is where the majority of Kiryu's story takes place. In the top right, we see Sotenbori, another very familiar location in the series, which is where the majority of Majima stories takes place. It's odd how they're above the heads of the opposite character in which their story takes place, but they do end up both visiting the other towards the end of the game. In the middle, we can see the hauntingly plain view of the crux of the entire game, the location known simply as the Empty Lot. A highly sought after piece of land that has caused such misery and bloodshed. It being there gives this ghostly impression to me, and its role in the story makes it seem like such a mythical place, despite being a piece of seemingly abandoned land. It can make dreams come true, but it brings about the worst in people. Placed at either side of it are Tachibana and Makoto, the two that have the power to change everything about it. What's most visually subtle but very meaningful is that the Empty Lot is in the middle of it all. It doesn't matter if things are happening in Kamurocho or Sotenbori, the Empty Lot is the center of everything. Finally, we have the cash that's falling down around them, and that's essentially what the game, and to a larger extent the entire criminal world revolves around. They're surrounded by all this money, as that's what their lives are now, imprisoned by the greed of others. The notes begin to fall from a blue background that seems calm and normal, just another day, but float down helplessly into the red, almost as if falling into some kind of damnation or chaos, which is where our two protagonists also find themselves. The only differences in the Japanese version are the title itself, its subheading, and the various logos. As most of you will know, the Yakuza series is only known as Yakuza in the West, and has been named Ryuga Gotoku, or Like a Dragon, in Japan. Each of the entries carries a different, somewhat poetic addition to its title instead of just keeping it as a numbered entry, which is really cool. This one is known as Ryuga Gotoku Zero Chikai no Basho, which translates to Like a Dragon Zero, the Place of Oath. This subheading carries a few very fitting meanings. Despite Majima having history set before this game, in Yakuza 4, this is essentially the starting point of both of these characters, and the time at which they decided what they wanted to be. Kiryu wants to have a life defined by his own sense of justice, his own values, and not to be afraid to fight against anything he sees as wrong, no matter the cost. Majima wants to live a life free of his chains, to get out of life what he wants, and to survive and rise in the criminal underworld. The Place of Oath could also refer to the physical location of the Empty Lot, which is what the game revolves around, a piece of land that is worth more than just simply money. The Empty Lot was the reason certain characters had their lives changed, and others their lives ended. This was the place where a future was set in stone. One small detail which I noticed was this red circle behind the text. In the Japanese versions, this has been standard since its first entry back on PS2 in 2006, and every mainline entry afterwards has included it. Even the historical spin-offs Kenzan and Ishin. But not the PSP spin-offs in Like a Panther. It wasn't until the release of Yakuza 0 that they designed the Western logos to include this as well. This continued for Yakuza 6, Kiwami, and Kiwami 2, but appeared to stop with Yakuza Like a Dragon for both the Japanese and Western releases. The Chinese version is essentially the same as the Japanese version, but with two differences. The title is the same, but with an added Chinese translation below it, and has the inclusion of the character Lao Gui, the Chinese assassin hired by the Dojima family. In the European/North American and Japanese version of the game, Lao Gui looks like this. But in the Chinese version, he is played by Hong Kong actor Sam Lee, both in likeness and voice. Apparently, Zero's director Toshihiro Nagoshi wanted to cast him in the game because he really liked his acting in the 2002 Japanese movie Ping Pong. It's unclear why there are two models of him for different regions, i.e. why outside of China didn't get Sam Lee, but it's cool that the Chinese version has something quite unique to it. Being on the cover is an interesting addition as it does add another cool looking cast member to its roster and would likely appeal to fans of Sam Lee in China. I'm not sure having his original face on the cover would have done much for other regions, given that he isn't exactly a looker. What is ironic though is that Lao Gui is an assassin and that they work best when they're not seen, so he's sort of given himself away on the Chinese version as opposed to not being seen at all. Even his name of Lao Gui translates to Old Ghost, which gives his changing visual look and appearance and disappearance an oddly fitting feeling on the covers. Yakuza 0 Director's Cut released an entire decade after its original release, and with it an entirely new visual design that cuts out the entirety of the supporting cast members and leaves us with just Kiryu and Majima. Here we have the two standing in a street, Kiryu walking towards us, and Majima with his back to us but also still looking towards us. The streets are littered with Japanese cash, and it also features a new title design. Starting with the two main characters, we have Kiryu in a different outfit. Instead of wearing the flashy white suit with orange shirt combo that he obtains a few hours into the game and becomes his main outfit, here he's wearing the black suit, white shirt and gold chain he wears at the very beginning when he's collecting a debt from Taichi Kurihara. We can tell that this is moments after he has collected on that debt, as he still has blood over his left cheek that we see him with during the intro sequence. Interesting how it isn't just the blood mark, but specifically when he notices it in a car window's reflection and wipes off a little bit, but it leaves a smear before washing it off in a public bathroom. Staying with his usual outfit however, as I suppose that's what he wears for 99% of the entire game, Majima still has a suit that he wears for the cabaret manager job, so nothing really has changed about him. Their stances do say quite a bit though. Kiryu is walking in a clear direction, facing forwards and has purpose. A goal. He's holding his head high towards the future of his own making. Majima on the other hand is standing still as if unable to move from where he is, and is only able to look back at the life he once had. A life that Kiryu is moving towards. You may have noticed that some of the notes that are scattered, in particular these two at the very front, are stained with blood, which is a very nice indication of the dangerous and blood-soaked path that these two walk, and that money means everything in the underworld. It doesn't matter who you are, how big or how small, how rich or how poor, how good or evil, how right or wrong. Money is king, and if there's a way to get it, then blood may be spilled. We know in this story that many people's lives are affected by those chasing riches during the bubble, some causing others to lose their lives. This particular banknote was in circulation in Japan from November 1st, 1984 to April 2nd, 2007. On the front it features Fukazawa Yukichi, a writer, philosopher and educator who, during the Meiji era of 1868 to 1912, was one of the key figures in promoting ideas from the West. On the reverse side of the note is a pair of pheasants which you can somewhat make out on a couple on the floor. What makes this banknote symbolic to the game is that it isn't just money, but a 10,000 yen bill, which is the highest bill there is in circulation in Japan. It was worth around £47 or $63 during 1988, but compared to 2026, they would be worth around £125 or $215, if my math is correct. The street that they're walking down seems to be split into two. On the left hand side we have the streets of Kamurocho, illuminated in a yellowy gold tone, and on the right we have the slightly darker purple and pink streets of Sotenbori. Each one on the side of their respective character's location, which is a change from its original cover. The colours used are very striking and carry great meanings. For Kiryu's Kamurocho, it's a mix of yellow and gold. Yellow is often used to symbolise optimism, curiosity and energy, while gold represents wealth, prestige and inner strength. These themes match up with Kiryu as he maintains an optimistic outlook to make it through the story, and stand up for what he believes is right in a world full of those chasing wealth and power. In the end, his inner strength allows him to become the legendary Dragon of Dojima. Majima's Sotenbori is a mix of deep purple and pink. The deep purple represents dominance, the unknown, introspection, as well as moral ambiguity, and the pink represents emotional vulnerability and comfort. These work very well for Majima as he's uncertain of his future, being a prisoner of those more powerful than him, looking into who he is and what he wants out of life, as well as his feelings towards Makoto Makimura that call into question what he feels is morally right and wrong, as well as his protective nature over her. The final two noticeable changes to this version are the addition of the director's cut tagline underneath the title in a sleek and bold gold line, as well as the number 0 being changed from its usual deep red to also match the colour of wealth and riches. Out of these four, and two of them being essentially the same, I think my favourite one has to be the European one, mainly because of the layout that makes it look like a big epic story with many characters. The English title of Yakuza also seems to be a bit more well balanced at the bottom too, as opposed to the Japanese. The addition of Sam Lee is pretty cool, but I think showing him on the box wasn't all that necessary, and I liked it in the game he was an unknown assassin until towards the end. I think I do like the appearance of Sam Lee more than the grotesque man, however. And the director's cut is pretty nice, but I just don't think it stands out as much as the others. What did you think of them, and which was your favourite? Let me know.